Hey everyone, welcome to the first video of what I will hope to be a fun and exciting project. So here's the deal, I am building my own custom arcade machine right here in 2024. Wait a second. Hey, I forgot. I made this video on December 29th, 2024, so technically it's not even 2024 anymore when you're watching this. I lied. By the time I upload it, it'll be 2025. Happy late New Year? Alright, back to the video. Now I know what you're thinking. Why build an arcade machine in 2024? With all the great gaming consoles such as the PlayStation 5, Xbox, Switch doesn't count as a great gaming console, running Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach on there will turn it into a nuclear bomb, and PC setups out there, so why go through the trouble making your own? Well, it's all about the experience, the satisfaction of creating something with your own hands, blending the old school arcade vibes with today's gaming technology. Plus, there's something about the nostalgic about those classic games that just feel right. Now don't worry, I'm not going for a clunky old school machine that takes up half the room. I'm thinking of something compact, sleek, and most importantly, something that runs Steam games with ease. Yeah, you heard that right. An arcade machine with the power of modern gaming, all crammed into a custom built design. I'm really excited to share the journey with all of you, and I hope you'll stick around. If you like the idea of seeing the progress all the way from the sketch to the finished project, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now let's get started on this arcade machine build, shall we? So you might be wondering, why an arcade machine? Aren't arcades kinda obsolete? I mean, with all the advancements in gaming, why go back to that old retro setup? Well, here's the thing. There's something magical about the simplicity of those old school arcade games. Think about it. You're standing there, the joystick in your hand, the sound of a coin dropping, the thrill of a high score flashing on the screen. However, it's a completely different experience compared to today's massive open world games and ultra realistic graphics. It's more immersive, but in a different way, of course. But it's not just about nostalgia. It's about connecting with a different time when gaming was simpler and more focused on fun. And let's be honest, in today's world where everything is online and fast-paced, sometimes we just forget about that basic joy of just playing games. Also, if I'm being honest, who doesn't love a good challenge? I wanted to bring the arcade experience back in a way that it feels personal and modern. Now, let's talk about why I think it's even more relevant today. With the rise of indie games, there are so many titles that deserve to be played on a big arcade screen. These games aren't about fancy graphics or cutting-edge tech. They're about pure, raw fun. They're about gameplay, creativity, and providing an experience that just can't be replicated in the same way on regular console or PC setup. Take games like Dead Cells, for example. The fast-paced, roguelike action of Dead Cells would be perfect on an arcade machine. It's got that old-school vibe, but with modern touches that make it addictively fun. How about Enter the Gungeon, a bullet-hell dungeon crawler that will keep anyone glued to the arcade screen with its challenging gameplay and pixel art style. And then there's Hotline Miami. The Neon Sulk's high-energy action, over-the-top soundtrack makes it the perfect arcade game. You can't forget Cuphead. Its stunning animation and intense difficulty would be so much fun on an arcade machine, especially with that just one more try feel. And don't get me started on Shovel Knight. It's got that classic platformer vibe, with a modern polish and a deep and engaging world. But let's talk about Undertale for a second. Yeah, I know it's a bit of an odd one for an arcade, but hear me out. The humor, the story, and the unique combat system would create a truly unique arcade experience. You'd be navigating the underground, making choices that impact the game, while tackling some of the memorable boss fights in indie gaming history. Plus, the soundtrack's absolute banger. It would be a joy to experience on an arcade machine setup. Speaking of amazing soundtracks, how about Amori? The game has such a unique blend of psychological horror, heartwarming moments, and unforgettable music. You can absolutely dive into that world with a game that has both a captivating story and super engaging combat mechanics. It's definitely one of those games that would be so much fun to experience on an arcade machine. And let's not forget Risk of Rain, especially Risk of Rain 2. The thrill of survival, trying to unlock all the crazy characters, and dealing with progressively, it'd be perfect for those long, challenging arcade sessions. You are always pushing your limits, trying to survive longer and longer with each run, and that loop will keep you coming back for more. And Rivals of Aether. You know, the fighting game where the whole cast is made from elemental creatures. A perfect game for the arcade, where you can throw down against friends or strangers using combo-based mechanics and smashing your way through different friends. Opponents. It's fast and chaotic, and it will be a total blast in an arcade setting. It makes it even funner if I add 2 players into the arcade using buttons and a different controller. That would be a good plan for the arcade setup. I might just add that. And last but not least, how could I forget Pizza Tower? It's got that hyper-fast platforming madness that would be perfect for an arcade. You're running, jumping, smashing through levels with insane speed while the traffic, where did I get that word from? Soundtrack is going off. It's chaotic, fun, and will be absolutely addictive on an arcade screen. Plus the art style, ooh, smooth. It's got a beautiful blend of retro, and the gameplay just begging for that arcade treatment. So with all these incredible indie titles out there, why not bring them to life in an arcade format in 2024? The concept of a custom arcade machines feels more relevant than ever, and it's the perfect way to combine the best of both worlds, classic gaming and modern indie hits. So why now build an arcade machine in 2024 of all times? Well, we're in an era where technology is moving at such a fast pace and everything is becoming more accessible. Building your own arcade machine today is much easier than it was 5 or 10 years ago. And that's because of how affordable and powerful technology has become. Back in the 80s and 90s, arcade machines were the pinnacle of gaming. But today, the landscape has changed. Arcade machines are nostalgic for many of us, but at the same time, it feels like they've lost their place in modern culture, with all the consoles, PCs, and mobile gaming dominating the scene. However, that's what makes this project even more intriguing, reintroducing that sense of nostalgia while bringing something fresh and modern into the mix. And that's the key to this project, blending the past and the present. We're not just recreating an old arcade machine, we're creating something that's personal and custom, and using the modern tech we have now as like a love letter to the arcade era, but with the possibilities of today digital too. Plus, having a custom arcade machine allows you to personalize it. Want to throw in a couple of indie games? You got it. Want to make the controls your own? No problem. Maybe, but what if I add the LED strips or a custom cabinet design? That's all part of the fun. The customization possibilities are endless, and it's what makes this project feel so personal. Another big factor is that we're living in a time where people are really embracing hands-on projects more than ever. It's not just about playing games anymore, it's about making something, learning something, and creating something that you can be proud of. An award where so much entertainment is passive, this arcade project gives you the chance to make something that's truly your own, and that's, in my opinion, is pretty rewarding. And there's something to be said about the value of creating something from scratch. Sure, you can just buy an arcade machine online, but where's the fun in that? Where's the learning? The satisfaction is seeing your own ideas come to life. That's what makes this project special. Plus, with the gaming community continuing to thrive, as always, it's the perfect time to build something that gives a nod to gaming history, while also tapping into the new generation of gamers who love indie titles and retro-inspired experiences. I think in 2024, there's a real hunger for things that feel authentic, and building something with their own hands, something that merges the classic arcade with modern tech, is as authentic as it gets. So, in a nutshell, now is the perfect time to build an arcade machine. Not only can you tap into that nostalgia for the classic arcade days, but you can also create something that fits your unique taste. With the tools and tech at our disposal today, there's never been a better time to get hands-on with this kind of project. Now that we've established why it's the right time, let's dive into the process itself. Alright, so now that we've talked about why this is the right time for such a project, let's get into the concept of the arcade machine. The vision behind this is pretty simple. I want to create something that blends the best of both worlds, retro gaming and modern gaming technology. The goal here isn't just to build any arcade machine. I'm aiming to create something that feels like it belongs in the modern world, like something you'd see in Steam-Cade. It's to run Steam games, so we're talking about the power of a full PC setup and the form factor of a classic arcade. Essentially, it's a bridge between nostalgia and innovation. So first things first I wanted to nail down was the physical design of the arcade cabinet. I'm thinking of something sleek but sturdy. Nothing too extravagant, but something that gives you that classic arcade feel. It's have the traditional joystick and button setup, of course, but also the ability to add custom controls if needed. You know, for those indie games that uses more unique input methods. Now, let's talk about the guts of the machine, where all the magic happens. I'll be using a small compact tower PC to run the show. I'm not gonna go with the Raspberry Pi here. I need the full power of a PC to handle modern games, especially if I want to play something like Risk of Rain or Pizza Tower. These aren't your average arcade games. They need more horsepower. I'll be running SteamOS as the operating system, as I said earlier, mainly because it's perfect for this kind of setup. It's lightweight, optimized for gaming, and has a great user interface for quickly launching games. Plus, the whole Steam library is right there at my fingertips. I want to create something that not only plays games, but is easy to use and maintain. And as for the display, well, we're going with a classic 19 or 22-inch LCD screen. I want it to be big enough to give you that immersive arcade experience, but not so big that it feels out of place. It needs to sit comfortably with the frame of the cabinet while still packing a punch in terms of visuals, of course. But here's the fun part. I'm going to be customizing everything about the cabinet, from the artwork on the sides to the lighting inside. Wow, that rhymes. I want this thing to be personal. I'll likely design some custom graphics, maybe a fun retro aesthetic to match the feel of the games I want to play, and of course the lighting, because who doesn't love a good LED strip to give it that glowing arcade machine look? It's so adorable with this glowing red LED strips as I brutally rip off Demon's arms. And really, that's what this is all about, combining functionality with creativity. This project isn't just about building something that works, it's about building something that speaks to me as a gamer, as a creator, and as someone who's really passionate about both the past and future of gaming. I want this arcade machine to reflect that. So that's the basic concept. It's an arcade machine that echoes parts of nostalgia and innovation, designed to run modern games, but the feel of the classic look of arcade games. I mean, machines, well, same thing that we all know enough, but now that we've got the idea down, it's time to start sketching some things out in a more detail and really diving into the engineering side of things. Let's move on to the next part, getting this concept into SolidWorks and bringing it to life. Now that we've got the concept down, it's time to talk about what you actually need to bring this idea to life. A project like this requires a lot of different parts, tools, and a bit of patience. So let's break it down. First things first, let's talk about the physical materials. You're going to need a solid frame for the arcade machine itself. itself. I'm gonna be using some good quality sheet metal to build the frame. Something sturdy enough to hold everything in place and withstand the wear and tear. That comes with arcade use, of course. Sure, it's not the most glamorous material, but it's durable and gets the job done. In fact, if you take a quick look at the pricings, you might realize that it's a lot more affordable than you think. That is, until you see how much I need for all the panels. Never mind. You also need wooden panels to create the size of the cabinet, which will be the main body of the arcade. Maybe I'll probably use some MDF for plywood, since they're both easy to work with and relatively cheap. Plus, they hold paints and decals really well. Now, next up, let's talk about the internal components. To run this whole thing, you need a small, compact tower PC. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not using a Raspberry Pi for the second time. Nope, that's the third time I believe. But a small desktop PC that's able to run Steam OS and handle the Steam library with ease. The tower I'm looking for is small enough to fit comfortably inside the cabinet, but powerful enough to handle games like Risk of Rain, Undertale, Mori, and Pizza Tower. You also need a monitor for this. This is going to be your main display. I'm opting for a 19 to 22 inch LCD screen that's not too large but still gives you a decent view of the game. It's important to get a screen that can support HDMI, as that's how we'll be connecting the PC to the display. Then there's the input system. This means the joysticks and buttons you'll be using to play. You can find arcade button kits online, and they're usually customizable, so you can get exactly what you need. I'm looking to get a standard arcade joystick along with buttons that have a good feel, something that gives you that classic arcade tactile feedback. Of course, I'll also need to wire these into a control board, which connects to the PC to register inputs. Now, what's an arcade machine without some sound? I'll be adding a decent speaker system to the setup, ideally something compact but powerful enough to give you that immersive arcade experience. I'm thinking of placing the speakers at the bottom of the cabinet so they're directed to the player, just like in those classic arcades. And lastly, we got some of the smaller items. A power supplies, which is essential to get everything running smoothly, and an LED lighting for some extra flair maybe. I'm really getting excited by this custom arcade artwork as well. You need to design it yourself. I got Illustrator, or hire someone on Fiverr. Not a good idea. To make a design that matches your personal touch. If you ask me, that's where you really get to express yourself and show off the personality of your arcade. So here's the rundown. Sheet metal? No, absolutely not. I already saw the price of that thing. Wood, a small PC tower, a monitor, joysticks and buttons, wiring, a speaker system, probably LEDs, and some really cool artwork. That's the core of what you need to start building an arcade machine. Some of these things might be basic, but when you're all putting it together, it's the little details that makes all the difference. Now that we got the materials lined up, it's time to get to the fun part. Designing the actual arcade machine in SolidWorks and making sure everything fits together just right. That seems fun. It's not. The dimensions, that's just pain. Alright, now that we got the materials figured out, it's time to dive into the design process. This is where we'll bring the arcade machine to life, digitally, at least for now. I'm using SolidWorks to sketch out the cabinet, create the structure, and make sure everything fits together perfectly. So I always start with the basic frame. The dimensions of an arcade machine are the key here. It needs to be big enough to fit the monitor, the PC tower, and the joystick setup, but small enough to not take up an entire room. I decided to go with a more compact design, like the old Mortal Kombat machines. Something around the size of a traditional tabletop arcade machine, but nope. We're doing a full tower arcade machine, putting it in my room. Now, the first challenge in this design is getting the monitor mounted security in place. It needs to be tilted slightly towards the player so they can get a comfortable viewing angle. I've decided to create a frame around the monitor that holds it snugly, but also allows some airflow around the screen so it doesn't overheat during those long gaming sessions. After getting the monitor and frame set up, it's time to add the buttons and joystick controls. Now, I'm using the classic arcade setup. 2 joysticks, 6 buttons per player, maybe, and a start button right in the middle. I designed the control panel to fit comfortably for the 2 players, so there's enough space between the joystick and the buttons, but not so much that you're reaching across the table to hit the start button. I went with a pretty straightforward button layout, nothing too crazy here. It's got that classic put your hand down and you know exactly where everything is kind of feel. It's important that the arcade control panel is ergonomic. you want to play for hours without your hands cramping up. And then there's a part I almost, you know what? Screw that part. We're not doing the LED system. We're not bother going to do that. I'm gonna have to measure the dimensions of the LEDs. I'm not doing that. But hey, it's nice stuff for the overall vibes. Let's glue it on the dead zones. Zones where you don't see anything. Next, I'll be working on the back panel of the arcade machine, where the PC will be mounted. Since I'm using a small tower PC, I need to make sure there's enough space for ventilation and easy access to the ports. I added a removable back panel so I can swap out the cables or upgrade the system if I need to. Sorry, this PC is an old man. Here's the fun part, getting the arcade machine cabinet designed to match my personal style. I'm going to be using Adobe Animate for this. I'm going to add some custom artwork to the sides and front. Maybe a few throwbacks to my favorite games, or maybe some even anime references. But the goal is to make it look unique and personalized while keeping the arcade aesthetic. Since I'm making this in Adobe Illustrator, it's going to be really confusing, so I better paint it. Adobe Illustrator is just for the concept anyhow. It's not all about building a machine. Is creating something that feels like it's yours. Once the design is done, the next step is making it real. We'll actually have to get the fabrication and assembly. But before we can start cutting any non-existent metal that I did not buy, or wood that I still haven't bought yet, I need to make sure everything lines up perfectly in the design so that when I start building it, there won't be any surprises. No alarms and no surprises. Of course, there are challenges. I've been sketching out this arcade machine, and while I'm excited to get started, there's few things that could go wrong along the way. Building our custom arcade machine is not all fun and games, unfortunately. First, there's this wiring and power supplies. The setup I'm using runs off a small tower PC. Great for running for Steam games. That means there's a lot of power running through the system. Keeping everything safe and effective without overheating and catching on fire is going to be crucial. I'll need to make sure I'm using the right cables, properly grounding everything, and designing an effective cooling system. I can't risk about blowing any fuses, or worse, frying the dang system. Now, the next challenge is the frame itself. Getting everything to fit in such a tight space. Gonna have to get some Tetris work inside this. Sure, it's in the design now, but in reality, once I start building it, I might run into clearance issues, or have trouble securing some of the heavier components, like the monitor or PC. The frame needs to be sturdy enough, but also light enough to be portable. I'm confident that I'll work through it, but it's definitely something I'll need to keep an eye on as I build it. Building this arcade machine is going to be a journey. There's going to be a lot of trial and error, and I'll have to be flexible when things don't exactly go as planned. I'll have to be patient and think through every problem that comes my way, but in the end, the process is just as important as the end result. Yes, there are obstacles, but that's what makes it fun. The challenge is what makes it worth doing. So no matter what comes up, I'm ready to tackle it. It's just part of the process. Before we wrap this up, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. Seriously, I know there's a ton of videos out there, and yet you stuck around until the end of mine. That means a lot to me. So congratulations, you officially completed the first part of my custom arcade machine build. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope you're just as excited as I am to see the project come to life. It's not just about the end product, it's about the journey, and I'm so happy you're here for it. You've got a long way to go, and trust me, comrade, there's going to be a lot more fun, challenges, and progress to share. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. You won't want to miss what's coming up next. And again, thank you for supporting my video. This is just the beginning, and I'm glad you're a part of it. See ya, until next time.